You are 31 years old, you have 23,000 in a savings account and a full-time job that pays you well enough to be comfortable and not well enough to be free. Someone calls you on a Tuesday afternoon. It is your uncle's accountant. Your uncle ran a pest control route in a mid-sized metro for 19 years. He is retiring to Arizona. He is not selling the business on the open market. He is offering it to you first. The business has 11 recurring commercial accounts, 47 residential customers on monthly contracts, 1 van, 1 part-time technician named Roy, and a filing cabinet full of service agreements that have never been digitized. It made $187,000 in revenue last year. The owner drew $74,000. There is no real separation between the business checking account and the life your uncle has been living. You have 1 week to decide. This is the first boring cash machine. And the question is not whether pest control is exciting. The question is whether you can route the cash correctly once it is yours. Start here before you even look at the offer. The business you're looking for at this level has 5 characteristics. Recurring revenue, meaning customers pay on a schedule without being resold every cycle. Simple operations, meaning the complexity ceiling is low enough that one competent person can manage it without deep technical training. Low capital expenditure, meaning you are not replacing machinery every 3 years to stay competitive. Boring demand, meaning recessions do not eliminate the need for what this business does. And a clear local moat, meaning geography, licensing, or relationships create friction that keeps a national competitor from steamrolling you the week after you buy it. Pest control fits. So does pool service, commercial cleaning, HVAC maintenance contracts, bookkeeping for tradespeople, small format trash hauling, and niche B2B supply routes. None of them are glamorous. All of them throw off cash while you sleep, if you run them right. Now the deal math. Your uncle wants $210,000. He arrived at that number by multiplying something he felt was fair by something else he read online. You do not price it that way. You start with seller's discretionary earnings, SDE. That is EBITDA plus the owner's compensation, plus any personal expenses run through the business. Your uncle's accountant sends you 3 years of returns. Revenue is consistent. SDE after cleaning up the add-backs, the personal cell phone, the truck the family used on weekends, the meals, comes out to $89,000 annually. At a 2.5 times multiple, which is fair for a solo operator service business with customer concentration risk and no real management layer, the business is worth $222,500. His number is not crazy, but you need it to pencil against debt service. Here's the minimum you need to know before you sign anything. If you borrow $180,000 to buy this business and service that debt at $2,100 a month on a 10-year note, you need the business to cover that payment, cover Roy, cover insurance, cover your own replacement wage, and still leave a cushion. The debt service coverage ratio you need is at least 1.25. That means for every dollar of debt service, the business produces $1.25 in available cash. If it does not clear that threshold on conservative projections, you do not buy it at that price. You either renegotiate or you walk. How do people actually buy the first one? Not with a pile of savings, not with a rich parent writing a check. Usually with a combination. Your uncle carries a seller note for 30% of the purchase price at 6% interest over 5 years. You assume the existing service contracts, which transfer with the business and represent real value. You put in $22,000 of your own cash as a down payment, which is nearly everything you have saved. And you access a small SBA 7A loan for the remainder, secured by the business assets, your personal guarantee, and a lien on whatever else you own. The personal guarantee is not a formality. It means if this business fails, the bank comes for your personal assets before it stops. That is the real price of the first acquisition, not the down payment. The guarantee. You are not simply an investor observing from a distance. You are the person whose name is on the line. That changes how seriously you watch the numbers every single week. The first 90 days are not about growth. They are about not losing what you bought. Day 1, you call every commercial account personally. You introduce yourself. You tell them the service is continuing without interruption. You listen more than you talk. You find out which accounts Roy actually manages and which ones your uncle handled directly because of relationships. 3 of the 11 commercial accounts have a soft tie to your uncle personally. You note that and you calendar a second call for week 6. You do not raise prices in month 1. You do not fire Roy in month 1. You stabilize. You tighten the scheduling software so routes stop overlapping inefficiently. You read every service agreement and flag the 3 residential customers who have not paid on time in 6 months. You send a polite reminder, and you set a policy for what happens if it continues. By day 60, you have 1 dashboard. Revenue booked this month. Recurring contract value, accounts receivable over 30 days. Cost per job. You are not running a spreadsheet empire. You are watching four numbers every Monday morning before 9. Cash routing starts on day 1 and it is non-negotiable. You open 4 accounts under the business entity: operating, tax reserve, debt service, and reinvestment. Every dollar of revenue hits operating. Every Friday, you move 22% to the tax reserve account. Debt service pulls automatically on the 15th. Owner pay, which you have set below market intentionally at $3,800 a month for the first year, transfers on the 1st. What remains after all of that sits in the reinvestment bucket until it is large enough to fund something. A second van, a second route, or eventually, the first step towards something that looks less like a job and more like a company. The boring cash machine is running. Now you learn to own it without letting it own you. By month 14, the business has stopped surprising you. Roy shows up, the routes run, the dashboard reads the same 4 numbers every Monday, and most of them move in the right direction. You draw $3,800 a month, the debt service clears automatically, and the reinvestment account has $31,000 in it. You have learned the business the way you learn a neighborhood. Not by reading about it, by being in it until it stops feeling foreign. This is the moment most people stop. The machine is working. Life is manageable. The next step requires you to build something different, not a better job, but a system that does not require you to be present for every decision inside it. You start with the SOPs. Standard operating procedures are not exciting to write. They are a description of how the work actually gets done, written clearly enough that someone you have never met could perform it correctly on day 1. Every recurring job has a checklist. Every customer complaint has a response protocol. Dispatch follows a decision tree. Chemical inventory is counted on Fridays by whoever closes the route. None of this is sophisticated. All of it is necessary. Because the second business you buy will not have Roy. It will have someone you do not know yet, in a city you may not live in, managing customers you have never spoken to. The SOPs are the connective tissue between what you built and what you are about to build. The manager hire comes next. Not a supervisor, a manager. Someone who can make decisions about scheduling, handle customer escalations, and hold Roy and whoever comes after Roy accountable to the standard you wrote down. You hire internally when possible. Roy has been watching you run this thing for over a year. You offer him a title change, a raise to $54,000, and a small performance bonus tied to customer retention and monthly revenue. He accepts. You are no longer the operator. You are the owner. Those are different jobs. Now the acquisition flywheel starts turning. At the 1 to 10 million revenue range, deals do not primarily come from brokers. They come from phone calls you make yourself. You build a list of comparable businesses within 200 miles. Commercial cleaning companies with 5 to 15 employees. HVAC maintenance operations with contract books. Pool service routes in growing suburbs. You find the owners through LinkedIn, through state licensing databases, through industry associations, through the guy who supplies your chemicals and supplies theirs too. You write a short letter. Not a pitch. A letter. You say you own a similar business, you are looking to grow through acquisition, and if they ever consider a transition, you would like to be the first call they get. You send 43 of these letters in a 6-week period. 4 respond. 1 becomes a conversation. That conversation becomes a deal. Brokers exist, and you will use them eventually. But in competitive broker processes, the seller is coached, the financials are packaged, and every buyer is running the same model at the same multiples. You will overpay in that environment unless you have a strategic edge. Proprietary outreach gives you a seller who has not been shopped, which means a number that reflects reality rather than what the market will theoretically bear at peak optimism. The financing stack has to evolve at this stage. Your second acquisition uses a similar structure to the first, SBA 7A for the senior debt, seller financing for 20 to 30% of the purchase price. The seller note is not just a financing tool, it is a filter. A seller who refuses to carry any paper on their own business is telling you something. They are either not confident the business will perform after they leave, or they need a clean exit because something is wrong that you have not found yet. A seller who carries a note stays motivated to answer your calls during the transition. That is worth the interest rate. The working capital trap is real and it catches first-time acquirers regularly. You close the deal, you fund the purchase, and 2 weeks later, you realize the business runs on a 45-day receivables cycle with a 14-day payroll. You need $60,000 of working capital on top of the acquisition costs just to keep the lights on without a cash crisis in the first quarter. You model this before you close. Every time. When the business stabilizes, typically 12 to 18 months post-acquisition, you explore refinancing. The original SBA rate was fair at the time of purchase. After 12 months of clean financials under your ownership, a bank will sometimes refinance at better terms. You do not always pursue it, but you always check. The entity structure matters more with every business you add. Each operating business lives in its own LLC. Those LLCs are owned by a holding company, usually a Wyoming or Delaware LLC or C Corp, depending on where you plan to take this. The HoldCo owns the opcos. If a liability event happens in one operation, it does not reach the others. Intercompany agreements are not optional. Management fees, shared services, IP licensing if applicable. These need to be documented, arm's length, and consistent. Your accountant earns their fee here. Cash routing at the multi-unit level becomes a centralized function. The HoldCo charges each OPCO a management fee, typically 4 to 8% of revenue, which funds centralized payroll, AP processing, accounting, and your own compensation as the allocator. Distributions from the opcos flow to HoldCo. You do not take personal distributions from an opco until HoldCo has confirmed that the business does not need that cash to grow. Distributions that feel like income are often just CapEx deferrals dressed up as profit. The failure modes at this stage are specific and they are predictable. Key person dependency means you bought a business where one employee has the customer relationship, and when that person leaves 6 months after close, revenue leaves with them. Culture rot means the first acquisition felt like a team and the second one felt like a takeover, and now neither one has a clear identity. Integration chaos means you tried to merge 2 billing systems, 2 service protocols, and 2 sets of customer expectations simultaneously, and nothing worked correctly for 4 months. You avoid these by going slower than your ambition tells you to. The personal guarantee on Business 2 is real, just like Business 1. You are still the person whose name is on the line. That does not change until revenue, track record, and balance sheet give a lender a reason to underwrite the entity instead of the individual. You work toward that. You are not there yet. And knowing exactly where you stand is the only way to move forward without flinching at the wrong moment. You have 2 businesses now, combined revenue approaching $2 million. A manager in each location. A cash routing system that moves money upward to HoldCo before anyone spends it on something that felt urgent but wasn't. The entity stack is clean. The SOPs exist. You have survived the working capital trap once and you understand why it exists. This is the moment the goal changes, not the tactics. The goal. You are no longer trying to own a better job. You are trying to build a capital allocation machine. Those are different things and they require different thinking. A job, even a profitable one, rewards presence. A machine rewards judgment. You are transitioning from the person who knows how every route runs to the person who decides where the next dollar goes. That transition is not automatic. It has to be designed. The HoldCo is not a passive structure. It is an operating layer. It employs you, it employs a part-time CFO, or a very good fractional controller. It processes accounts payable across every OPCO through a single system. It runs a monthly operating review for each business. 30 minutes per company. Revenue versus budget. Gross margin versus prior month. Customer count, churn rate, any open hiring. 4 numbers on a dashboard that you look at every Monday whether you feel like it or not. The dashboard is not exciting. The dashboard is the point. You are not managing the businesses anymore. You are managing the dashboards that tell you whether the businesses need you. The 13-week rolling cash flow is the document that keeps you out of crisis. Every Sunday night, a single spreadsheet shows you what every OPCO will collect, what every OPCO will spend, and what HoldCo will net from management fees over the next quarter, week by week. You have never once looked at this document and found a surprise that a less disciplined operator would have called an emergency. You find the problem in week 7 before it becomes a problem in week 10. That is the only reason to have it. That is reason enough. The banking relationship evolves here, and it evolves on purpose. You are not walking into a local branch. You have a business development officer at a regional bank or a community bank with a commercial lending appetite. You understand your covenants. Debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 means for every $1 of annual debt service, your business generates $1.25 in cash available to cover it. If you do not know your covenants cold, you are flying without instruments. Banks do not call you when you drift below threshold. They wait, then they act. You review your covenant compliance quarterly before anyone asks you to. That is how you stay in the conversation instead of becoming subject to it. The revolver is the tool that separates operators from allocators. A revolving line of credit against your receivables allows you to smooth cash flow gaps, move fast on a small acquisition, or cover a payroll week when a commercial account pays late. It costs you nothing if you do not use it and costs you prime plus 1 or 2 when you do. You keep it clean. You pay it down within 60 days every time you draw on it. The bank notices. This is how the cost of capital falls over time. Not through negotiation, through behavior. At the 10 to 50 million revenue range, acquisition mechanics shift. You are no longer buying on instinct and a broker package. You commission a quality of earnings report. A QAE is not an audit. It is an independent analyst telling you which revenue is real, which add-backs are legitimate, and whether the EBITDA the seller is presenting would survive your ownership. Add-backs are adjustments the seller makes to show you what earnings would look like without their personal airplane, their above-market owner's salary, or their nephew on payroll. Some add-backs are legitimate. Some are fiction dressed as accounting. The QOFE tells you which is which. You are spending $8,000 to $20,000 to avoid buying someone else's problem at a 5 times multiple. Working capital pegs appear in every deal at this level. The seller and buyer agree that the business will be delivered at close with a defined amount of working capital, receivables minus payables within a normal operating band. If it comes in short, the price adjusts downward. If it comes in high, you pay more. Sellers will push for a favorable peg. You will push back. This is not adversarial. It is mechanics. You build an internal deal team over time. Not a department. A discipline. You, a fractional CFO, an M&A attorney on retainer, and a CPA with transaction experience. The retainer costs you money you do not have before a deal and saves you more than that after one. Portfolio design at the holdco level is not just about finding more deals. It is about finding the right shape of deals. You want businesses that do not all go down at the same time. A commercial cleaning company whose customers are office buildings goes soft when occupancy drops. A residential pool service route is countercyclical to commercial real estate. A landscaping business is seasonal but predictable. A small industrial equipment rental business runs on capex cycles that look nothing like either of the others. You are not building a conglomerate. You are building a portfolio that has different exposure profiles, different customer types, different geographies, and light integration between them. You do not merge their CRMs. You share only what must be shared. The reinvestment rate is the variable that determines whether you reach escape velocity or simply maintain a comfortable ceiling. If you distribute everything Holdco earns, you are running a lifestyle. If you retain 60 to 70 cents of every dollar and deploy it into the next acquisition or the next growth investment within an existing allocator, the compounding is structural. Tuck-in acquisitions, smaller operators folded into an existing opco to absorb their routes or their customer book, are cheaper and faster to integrate than platform acquisitions. You do both. Tuck-ins when the organic base is strong. Platforms when you are entering a new vertical. The fragilities are specific and they are invisible until they are not. One OPCO with deteriorating margins can drain holdco cash faster than 3 good ones generated. Leverage creep happens when every deal looks cheap at closing and the combined debt load only becomes visible on the consolidated balance sheet. Concentration risk means 40% of total holdco revenue comes from 2 commercial accounts in one geography and both of them are renewing their contracts next spring. You look at these numbers on a schedule, not when something feels wrong. On a schedule. Because by the time something feels wrong, the schedule has already told you twice. $100 million in enterprise value is not a revenue number. It is not a bank balance. It is a multiple applied to earnings, and the multiple is a function of 3 things: EBITDA quality, growth rate, and how replaceable you are. A business generating $2 million in EBITDA with clean books, recurring revenue, and a management team that does not require you gets a higher multiple than a business generating $3 million with one dominant customer, inconsistent margins, and an owner who answers every service call personally. The market does not pay for size, it pays for durability. That distinction is worth writing down somewhere. You will see it. Enterprise value at exit or recapitalization is roughly EBITDA multiplied by a market multiple. For boring service businesses, that multiple ranges from 4 to 8 depending on the factors above. To reach $100 million in enterprise value, you need either $12 to $15 million in high-quality EBITDA at a 7 times multiple, or you need fewer dollars of earnings wrapped in a structure that looks institutional enough to justify 8 or 9 times. Revenue flexing, padding the top line through aggressive add-back adjustments or one-time commercial wins, does not move the multiple. It moves it down. Buyers at that scale run their own quality of earnings. They find the fiction. The only path to the premium multiple is genuine durability, and genuine durability is built slowly across many ordinary years. The plausible path starts with one small cash flow business. You have already seen that part. Then a platform acquisition, a second business with enough infrastructure to absorb tuck-ins. Then a third vertical, different exposure profile, different customer type. Then the tuck-ins, 1 or 2 per year, folded into the platform operators to absorb routes, customer books, equipment. Then institutional grade reporting, consolidated financials produced monthly, audited annually, covenant compliance reviewed on a schedule no one has to remind you to keep. The model is not complicated. The execution across 10 to 15 years is. Most people quit somewhere around year 4 when the second business underperforms and the revolver is drawn and the dashboard shows 2 red metrics at the same time. Staying through that is the work. The spreadsheet never captures the staying. De-risking the machine at scale has a specific checklist. Personal guarantees get negotiated out where possible. Early acquisitions required them. By the time you own 4 or 5 businesses with a demonstrated track record of debt service, the commercial lender has a relationship with the holdco entity, not with you personally. You push on every renewal. You do not always win. You push anyway. The bench of operators deepens, one general manager per opco with clear P&L ownership, and a bonus structure tied to EBITDA, not revenue. Insurance coverage gets reviewed annually by a commercial broker who understands multi-entity structures, not a generalist who sells personal lines on the side. Entity boundaries stay clean. No commingling of expenses between opcos. No shortcuts on the management fee documentation between holdco and its subsidiaries. Clean entity boundaries are not just an asset protection strategy. They are the thing that makes the portfolio legible to a future buyer or a minority partner. If a sophisticated investor cannot read your structure in 30 minutes, you have a governance problem, not a growth problem. Liquidity and optionality become the real conversation at $50 million in combined enterprise value. You establish a dividend policy inside holdco, not a percentage you decide each year based on mood, but a written policy. 60% retained for reinvestment, 40% distributed to equity holders on a quarterly schedule. The policy disciplines the allocation decision. It prevents the lifestyle creep that quietly dismantles holdcos that grew fast and allocated loose. When one opco underperforms, you do not borrow against a performing one to subsidize it. You fix it or you sell it. Selling one opco at the right moment can fund the next platform acquisition entirely, without new debt, without diluting equity, without a bank negotiation. That transaction type, selling a mature asset to fund an emerging one, is a capital allocation decision. It is the most important kind you will make at this level. Your role at scale is not operator. It is not even manager. It is allocator. The calendar reflects this or it does not reflect reality. 2 days per week on deal review, pipeline development, capital structure decisions. 1 day on portfolio monitoring, the dashboards, the 13-week cash flows, the covenant review. The remaining time on the head of operations hire, the person who runs the weekly cadence with every opco general manager so you do not have to. That hire changes the ceiling. Until you make it, you are still a very well-paid operator. After you make it, you are something else. You stop taking inbound calls from vendors. You stop approving expenses under $5,000. You stop being the person anyone calls when a route truck breaks down at 6:00 a.m. on a Thursday. You build the system that handles that call. You review whether the system handled it well. That is the distinction, and it is permanent. Here is the metric to protect at each level of the ladder. At the single business stage, cash conversion, the percentage of net income that becomes actual cash in the bank. At the multi-unit stage, customer retention by opco, because churn destroys EBITDA faster than any expense line. At the holdco stage, debt service coverage ratio across the consolidated entity, because leverage that looked reasonable in each individual deal can become dangerous on a single combined balance sheet. At the portfolio stage, concentration, no single customer, geography, or opco representing more than 30% of total holdco EBITDA. At the exit-ready stage, governance, because a buyer paying a premium multiple is paying for a machine that runs without the original owner. The governance is the proof. One boring business, compounding in the right direction, managed with the right discipline, leads here. Not quickly. Not without failure. Not without a revolver draw you did not plan for, and an operator hire that did not work, and a deal you passed on that turned out to be good, and one you did not pass on that turned out to be expensive. All of that is the path. The path is the point. Subscribe for the next episode in the series. The machine is just getting started.